Hello, my beauties. Nudges and messages about forgiveness have been just coming so strong last week or two and really ramping up. So strong that last night I was in my bathtub, my hot Epsom salt bath, winding down from the day, and I got a visit from a spirit who's local to my area, and I've encountered him before. He's kind of popped in before, but this time I really felt the nudge really strongly to not only open up to hear what he had to say, but then turn around and share it, which I did on my personal page because that's where my local peeps are. Got some interesting feedback too, but that's kind of beside the point. The point is, his message was he showed up to talk about forgiveness and how important, how forgiveness enabled him to move back home to grace, back home to God right after he passed. And it would have been really easy for him to stay stuck in attachment and not be able to move back to grace, get stuck in this world. The difference between a ghost and a spirit, just a quick aside here, this is good information just for anybody to have. The way that I differentiate a ghost and a spirit is a spirit who is in a body, has moved fully back to grace, gone through their integration process, and are no longer tethered to the physical world. A ghost, on the other hand, is like a continuation of our physical incarnation without a physical body. So that's a really intense experience. And I mean, I feel like we all have that experience in some incarnations, but really challenging is what I get from that. Just a really hard, frustrating experience to have. One of the things I do is I help ghosts move on to the other side when they're ready. If they're not ready, they won't do it. But when they're ready, I'm able to help them do that. But back to forgiveness. I wanted to do a little satsang on forgiveness because this is an area that I have been like, what? Me? Because I have a big thing that came up in the last year that spirit is nudging me towards forgiveness about. I won't go into a whole lot of details about what happened because that's the story. And the story's the story. And as we know, the story's kind of irrelevant. But I can tell you that it involved my family. And I have always been someone who's been so loyal to my family. And I tell you what came up for me during this experience was betrayal, a sense of being gaslighted, like my experience being discounted, told I was wrong, attacks on my role as a mother for my son, bullying, betrayal to someone outside of our family who felt like a ringleader in this situation, and a really strong feeling of disappointment in the whole situation and the players involved. So it's something that it's about a year ago, I guess. Coming up on a year, sort of Christmas time. It wrapped itself up last year. Time flies. So some, amazing things came out of this experience. I feel like I let go of a huge weights that were tethering me and keeping me out of my highest expression in many areas in terms of my independence and my confidence in myself. And yet I have not been able to really forgive the players involved. Some I don't even talk to this day. I can't face them. I can't talk to them. I'm so badly hurt still a year later that I can't even have a conversation with those people. I can't see myself having a conversation with those people. Other players I am talking to, but it's still the rage, the anger, the betrayal, the hurt still comes up. And it's just something that I'm realizing spirit is going, forgiveness time. And it's not just for me, I feel like this is a collective message, a collective experience. We're all being asked to commit to that forgiveness. And as I'm feeling into forgiveness, I'm really coming to, first I was like, nope, I don't have to do that. I can just walk away from that. Yeah, I just just leave that behind and I just move on, move forward. But forgiveness is so important. And forgiveness is not about reconnecting with somebody. Forgiveness is not, okay, we'll just move past it like it didn't happen and carry on. Forgiveness is an epic letting go of layers and layers of attachment. The blow up with my family runs very, very deep. It's clearly a hell of a lot deeper than this one instance. But it triggered something so massive in me, I had to turn around and walk away from it for a year. And forgiveness, as I begin to move into forgiveness, and in full transparency, I know I'm not there yet, but that's okay. As I move into forgiveness, I'm starting to have a deeper understanding of what forgiveness really is. You know, forgiveness is not, okay, you blew it, we'll just move on. I will forgive you, as in I'll move past it, I'll get over it, we'll just carry on as usual, we'll just carry on and do what we need to do. That's not what real forgiveness is. Forgiveness, in my situation, it will be not only letting go of the instance, it'll be letting go of, how do you put this? It's a complete releasing of the experience and all the experiences that came before that led to the feelings of resentment and betrayal and anger. A total release of expectation, and I don't mean that in like I just can't expect anything good out of you. I don't mean it like that. I mean in a releasement of all attachment to the other players and yourself and what went on there. It's a huge, huge act of letting go, a complete, maybe the fullest act of letting go that is available to us. And frankly, for me, I'm understanding Spirit says it's forgiveness time. And why is it forgiveness time? I don't feel like it's forgiveness time because I need to get over it. I don't feel like it's forgiveness time because it's family. You know, blood is thicker than water. And I don't really buy that. You know, I've always felt that way, which is why I think the situation was so intense for me. I'm really dismantling that story. That's the other thing. Forgiveness is releasing, untangling this like knot of stories that run so deep through us. So deep. By the time somebody shows up in our life and betrays us to the point where we hold on to it and we don't forgive them, like we hang on to this anger and this hurt, that's not just one instance in one person. That's a whole network, a whole knot of stories and unmet expectations and unexpressed emotions that has culminated in the attachment and hanging on to this one experience. So forgiveness is such a radical act of release and letting go. It is truly the only thing that will take us home to ourselves, to our God heart, completely releasing attachment to that situation and the whole root system that grew that situation out of all those hurts, all those little micro betrayals and everything that happened in your life that bloomed that tree of resentment. Letting go of all of that, letting it die. That's freedom. So forgiveness, they say, forgiveness isn't about the other person, it's about you. It's really true. But when you give yourself the freedom of full forgiveness, just radically letting go, the other person benefits from that as well. And that's how freedom is unconditional love. Unconditional love for yourself shows up as unconditional love for the other. I know you wronged me. You could say it that way, or you could say, your actions, hurt me, and I forgive you. I release that hurt. I release the need for you to pay. I release the story that my ego is hanging on to try and understand the hurt that I feel. And I believe in my heart of hearts that the way to this deep and radical forgiveness is through soulmatic renewal, or something like it. And soulmatic renewal is the act of taking the story and putting it on a shelf, bringing the feelings into your body and using the body as a container to get all the way down through the layers of emotions, letting yourself feel it so completely that you no longer hangs around you and you no longer hang on to it. Really being so angry at somebody that you can't forgive them is a hell of a trigger. Like, you've been triggered really bad. And what is a trigger? A trigger is an over-the-top emotional response to a situation. That's interesting. So I'm learning about this too as I'm telling you about it, as we're talking about it, because forgiveness is like, I mean, I'm an Aries sun sign, so I tend to forgive pretty easily, like live and let live. But then sometimes something will come up, like this situation that got in so deep and so hard and locked in that I'm like, how do you forgive that? How do you do that? How can I? How can I not hurt through this? And maybe you still hurt when you forgive. I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think the releasing of that experience, expelling of that emotion, maybe feeling it completely so that you can release it completely. There's sort of this blank spot there where there was this knot of resentment. But you know, the soulmatic renewal work that I was talking about a minute ago, it moves you down through layers of emotions, and you don't necessarily know where those emotions came from. So working with soulmatic renewal with a forgiveness, something you need to forgive, doing it vigilantly and consistently. It's like I use that analogy of like the root system, which grew into this, tree of resentment and anger attached to a person or a situation. Okay? So when we reel that back and we go into the root system and we feel each layer, we're addressing all of those micro betrayals and micro angers and micro resentments that led to the culmination, the blossoming of this tree of anger and resentment. And we get all the way down to the bottom, the root system dies and the tree dies. Goes back to the earth, mulches back into the soil so that something new can grow. You can create a new root system. And you create a new root system by giving yourself every experience in the moment. Really letting yourself have it. And then these calcification of anger and resentment doesn't build in there and culminate in something ugly, something that is an ugly experience, but more than that, something that keeps you trapped in a mental cage you cannot see. God wants to pull us out of that cage and help us expand into our highest expression. And it's through forgiveness that we can free ourselves from these stories, from these chains, from these tethers. Oh my God. So that being said, forgiveness, the act of forgiveness. So forgiveness is a radical letting go. It's a full, total release, a really big release. And what I always say about letting go is not an action. It is the opposite of an action. You can't force yourself to let go of something. So you can't force yourself to forgive anybody or anything. So if you're in that situation like I am, where you're getting the nudge about forgiveness, about a situation in your life, people or person in your life, and you're like, oh, but it hurts. I don't want to. The story's there, but it happened. Yes, it happened. Yes, it happened, but the story is irrelevant. The experience is what matters. Yes, it happened. I want you to join me in making the commitment today. I'm making a really strong commitment to myself that I'm going to be embarking on that journey of forgiveness. I'm not going to put a time frame on it, a limit, a deadline. I'm just going to walk through doors as they open. The most important, really the only thing that you can ever do in your healing process is to make that commitment. That's it. The rest is walking through doors, and the doors will open when you make the commitment. You have to be willing to let go of the story. I have to be willing to let go of the story, and that feels really hard right now. That feels really hard because this experience fucking devastated me. It was worse for me than when my dad died when I was 12. It devastated me. And yet, I am making a commitment to crawl out of that hole, to move towards forgiveness and free myself once and for all, to step into my highest expression. And I would like for you to join me in that commitment. And let's embark on this journey together. Because these things are always better with community. Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to hear how this makes you feel. What comes up for you? Forgiveness is a doozy, man. Let's do this though, huh? I love you madly.